Hello, I'm Olivia Mattis. I'm so happy to welcome you here today to our final program of 2024 on behalf of the Sousa Mendes Foundation. Our foundation was established 14 years ago in 2010 to honor a hero, a rescuer of World War II, Aristides de Sousa Mendes. He was a man who displayed great moral courage in his action, which was an action of rescue. Today, we have the privilege to be honoring another great man who is displaying moral courage in his action, which is to rescue memory, to rescue the names of the victims of the Holocaust, the Shoah, and to honor their memory by placing a stone that families can visit, that communities can visit, to mark the fact that these people lived, they really lived, they were among us before they became victims. You watched a beautiful film by Jane Wells, whom you will meet. Jane will be in conversation with Gunter Demnig later in the hour. We're going to start out the hour with 3 presentations. We're going to meet Alexander Stuckenberg. Now, Alexander you met him in the film. He's the man with the wonderful beard. You'll see him again in a moment. He's in charge of the Stolpersteine project for the Low Countries, as they're called. That's the Netherlands, Belgium, and Luxembourg. So he'll tell you all about the process and how you too can go about laying a Stolperstein for your own family members if you're so inclined, if you have family members who were victims. We also have a link we're going to be putting into the chat box throughout the hour. This is a link to a set of instructions that really answers all of your questions if you want to embark on this for your own families. So that is our first presentation, Alexander Stuckenberg. Then we will turn to 2 stories of individuals who laid these stones for their own family members. One is a woman you met in the film. She's actually one of the producers of the film. Her name is Ulrika Grunwald Citron. And she will tell you her story, and her story takes place in Amsterdam, which is really why the film takes place in Amsterdam and other places in the Netherlands. Then you will meet Jane Friedman. Now, Jane I've known for many years because her family, like my own, got visas from our hero Aristides de Sousa Mendes. And like many of our families, there are always 2 sides to the coin. If there was one side that was rescued, there were other people in the family who were not. So this is all our shared history. All of these stories intertwine. So after those 3 presentations, we will then have the conversation between Gunter and Jane Wells. Then we'll have a little award ceremony, and then I'll tell you about programs we have upcoming in 2025. I do hope that you will join us next year. For the whole year, we have something called season tickets. And so for one low price, you can join us all year long. You don't have to worry about it. You will automatically receive all of the links for all of our inspiring, wonderful Sunday programs. So before our first presentation, we have a little video clip, and this is from the composer of the film Here Lived, telling you why he wrote this music as he did. So let's roll the clip.
I wanted to begin the music to the credits of Here Lived with big gestures of human compassion. I wanted the theme to be both sad and beautiful, but I also wanted to be memorable. Because this is a story that needs to be remembered.
Great. So now we're going to have a presentation from Alexander Stuckenberg. Alexander, please take the floor.
Hello and good evening, everybody. I would just like to explain to you how you can actually apply for or start with Stolpersteine yourself. Okay, here you actually see the 100,000 Stolpersteine that was placed in May, and that was placed for Johann Wild in Germany. And there you can actually see how a German stone looks like, and they are looking mainly similar in all the other countries. Next, please. And yes, there we have an overview of all the countries which actually have Stolpersteine since the beginning in 1992. And as you can see, they are becoming more and more. And the last one were placed in 2024, this year, in Jersey and Guernsey, which are not really the UK and not really a separate country. Next, please. In addition to Stolpersteine, stumbling stones, we also have a threshold, which represents what happened in a house, in a building. So we place these thresholds for a group of people, so not for individuals. The demand for these thresholds is actually increasing at the moment because quite a lot of people really like the idea as well, as for Stolpersteine itself. For whom do we actually place Stolpersteine? That's you can actually easily say they are for all the victims of the Nazis from 1933 until 1945. And then inscriptions on the Stolpersteine itself, they should always represent what the main prosecution and steps in that process were. Next one. I think quite a lot of people of you probably know these marking charts, which were used by the Nazis to identify the prisoners or the people in the camps. So this system was used to combine different possibilities of, for example, you could combine the triangles, homosexual and a Jew, then you have a yellow triangle on top of a pink one, which is then a homosexual Jew. And this actually gives a little bit an idea of how and for whom we actually place Stolpersteine. I'm in charge for the Netherlands, Belgium, and Luxembourg, and I'm actually dealing with quite a lot of languages as well. All the languages on a Stolperstein are actually the local language or the language that the people were talking in that region. For example, in the Netherlands, we have Dutch, and we have in the northern parts in Friesland, we actually have Frisian as a language. And on some of the islands in the Caribbean, we have Papimento, which can then be used for the inscriptions of a Stolperstein. What is mainly on a Stolperstein, that's the name of the person, the year of birth, or the year of when the person were born. For kids, that can be the entire date. For adults, we normally only take the year. And then you can see, for example, that there are in this case, it actually tells the story of Johann Wild, what stages he actually passed through until he actually was murdered in München, Stadelheim. All the stones actually start with the one sentence, "Here lived," or "Here learned," or "Here taught," or "Here studied," or "Here worked." These are actually quite nice ways of actually placing the stones also to places where, for example, the house no longer exists. Then we can actually also state the name of the street, for example, or we can, if people were actually hiding in a cloister or so, we can actually also add the name of the cloister. So there are possibilities where we can actually all talk about it, what might be possible. Yeah, and for more information, you can actually look at the link in the comment section. And now I'm just handing over to Ulrika.
Thank you, Alexander, very much. And thank you to the Susan Mendes Foundation and for your interest in our film. It's a labor of love. And I just want to say that I was born and raised in Sweden. And if you start the first slide, I will tell you when I first came to the Netherlands, I'd never been there. Took me 50 years to find myself here in Westerbork, where my grandparents were deported to in 1942, my paternal grandparents. And this was my first physical visit after I had done a lot of research about their fate. They ended up in, this picture shows the punishment barrack. They were behind another set of barbed wires because not only were they Jews, but they were considered having committed the crime of, they didn't know where their children were, their 4 children were not, they didn't know the whereabouts, their children, 4 children, and therefore they were behind these barbed wires. So I thought that was of significance. Next slide, please. Here is the only photograph that I have of my grandparents. Their wedding day. The 2 flower girls are presumably relatives of my grandmother's. She had a lot of siblings. Everyone perished in the war, except for my father and his 3 siblings. So they got married in the mid-30s sometime. I don't have the exact date. Next slide, please. Here I am with the one and only Gunter Demnig on my first placement or laying of the stones of my grandparents. And here I am after the laying. We put a lot of flowers. I had family members and friends from New York coming with me. And there's my aunt, Lida. She was the youngest. She is the youngest of the 4 siblings. She was 2 months old when her parents were deported. And she was eventually taken into hiding, but she joined me for this laying of the stones. And here some of other family members, my husband, Joel, my son, Tobias is there, my cousin with the baby in her snuggly, and my aunt, my uncle, and a few other cousins, and my mother-in-law, also a Holocaust survivor from Hungary, joined us as well. Next. And there's Gunter laying stones for, this is a couple years later. I was continuing my research on my family. I knew nothing about what had happened to my father's family until I started this research in my mid-20s, early to mid-20s, and these stones were laid for, you can see here, therefore, as additional members of my grandmother's family, two brothers, two and their wives, lived actually with them in the same home. So they agreed to lay more stones. And you could see on the right, there's a stone for a baby, unborn baby. At the time she was unborn, but they decided to lay a stone for her at this place. She would have lived here had she been born and not deported. She was born in Westerbork, as you can see, and then she was killed 2 months later at Auschwitz. So I was really grateful that they laid these stones in addition to my grandparents after the fact that I had found out. Next slide, please. And here's a picture of us after that laying with Emil Schreiber on the very left, who is the director of the museum, the Holocaust Museum and the cultural quarters in Amsterdam, Alexander, and then a gentleman in blue come from the municipality of Amsterdam. And the man on the very right is a neighbor who took a great interest in the laying. He came downstairs and participated every time we laid stones. Well, the 2 times. He gave us history of the street. He shared with us that he had done some research himself, and that the entire street had been very Jewish. The whole neighborhood had been mostly, primarily a Jewish neighborhood, and most of whom were killed. Next slide. This is for my grandmother's twin sister, these stones. A year later, I wanted to lay stones for them as well. Nobody survived from that family. My great aunt, her husband, and their 3 children were all killed, and they lived a block and 2 blocks away from my grandparents. And so I laid those stones, and after that, and Gunter was there for that as well, and with Renee van den Hof, who works for the city, helping preparing and placing the stones. He was at each of these layings. And I'm very grateful to all of them, Alexander, of course, as well. So thank you, Alexander and Gunter. I just want to mention Henrietta Pimentel real quick. She was a nurse and a teacher who worked at the creche, the kindergarten, where the children were taken during the war after they were rounded up, was separated from their parents. It was later, or earlier this year, actually turned into built a Holocaust museum there. And in conjunction with the opening of the Holocaust Museum, it was decided that they wanted to lay a stone for her. She and her team at the creche saved, some people say, up to 1,000 children into hiding, and presumably my father and his siblings were among those. And that is the story very quickly. Of course, I could go on and on about this, but now I will hand it off to Jane Friedman, who will tell her story.
Thank you for that, and thank you everyone for coming. Growing up, I had no idea that my family was related to the Holocaust. My parents hid everything. I did find out eventually that my parents had escaped Europe after the Nazis swallowed up Belgium in 1940. About 10 years ago, I learned that my Friedman grandparents and my uncle were saved by Aristides de Souza Mendes, the Portuguese consul in Bordeaux. He issued them Portuguese visas so they could escape France and the approaching German army. My mother and her parents were saved by the American vice consul in Marseille, Hiram Bingham. He issued them US visas so they too were able to escape. Both families arrived in New York at the end of 1940. I knew nothing else. During the pandemic, I hired Jackie Schwartz, a veteran researcher, to dig up information about my extended family. The results were shocking. Close relatives from Frankfurt survived the war in hiding, and 2 were murdered. I had never even heard their names. In 2022, I applied for Stolpersteine. I felt I had a duty to relatives whose stories had been buried. In June, it was finally my turn. I flew to Frankfurt. That's me beaming with Dr. Martin Dill. A shout out to him. He organized the research about my family and dug up much more about them, especially my aunt's appeal for reparations after the war. Martin organized not only my ceremony, but ceremonies for 19 other families that weekend. Gunter Demnig's arrival at my relative's last residence in Frankfurt kicked off the proceedings. He presented the 4 stumbling stones to me as if for my approval. I must have smiled. Then he embedded the stones in the ground. He didn't speak, but the stories speak for themselves and for my relative. My aunts Dina and Rosa Friedman, who survived in hiding in the Belgian Ardennes. I had met them once when I was a child. There was no talk of World War II. My uncle Joseph Kam, who was arrested in Frankfurt after Kristallnacht and sent to Dachau. He was then expelled from Germany and was killed in 1942 at a Jewish internment camp in southern France. And the younger one is Joseph's son, Manfred, who was my cousin. He was 15 at the time. He was deported to Auschwitz and probably killed on arrival, according to Yad Vashem. When I first saw his picture, I was struck by how much he resembled my dad and my dad's younger brother. He was no doubt a freedman. His fate was devastating for me. A local history teacher brought her students to the ceremony as part of her unit on the Holocaust. They were mesmerized, and several of them spoke to honor my relatives. I was touched by that. I originally thought I was doing Stolpersteine for my forgotten relatives, but really I was doing it for myself. I wanted to feel that I had done my duty. Because of what I did and what Gunter Demnig started, my relatives will be forever remembered. So thank you.
Thank you, Jane Friedman and Ulrika and Alexander. And so in just a moment, we're going to turn to our brilliant filmmaker, Jane Wells, who did that very moving, touching film that you all saw, Here Lived. And she's going to be in conversation with Gunter Demnig. But before they have their conversation, Jane is going to cue up a little clip, and she'll tell you all about it now. Jane Wells, please take the floor.
Thank you. I'm Jane Wells, the filmmaker and the founder of 3 Generations, which produced this film. First, I would like to thank Olivia and her team at the De Souza Mendes Foundation for choosing this film and giving us this wonderful platform. And I'd also like to say that I was very moved by Alexander, Ulrika, and Jane Friedman's story today. Every time I do hear a new story, I see the photographs and those people are remembered. It's always a very moving and important moment for me, and I think for all of us. So Jane Friedman, I didn't know your story at all, so thank you. I feel very honored to hear it today. I was asked to pick a little clip to introduce Gunter, and I decided to pick the one you're about to see because this is a very solemn and important subject. But Gunter Demnig, as well as being a remarkable man and artist, is also a human being with a terrific sense of humor. And so I thought that a little bit of humor might just break the whole thing up a little bit, and you could see the other side of Gunter. So here is the clip.
So first I had the idea become a pilot with the Lufthansa. I made the test for 5 days, and on the flight back then I read all the conditions And I said to my mother, no, that's like a bus driver. And then I offered her, I was studying art, and she said, oh, well, we cannot do that, or your father will get a heart attack.
Well, Gunter, I guess it's wonderful to have you here and thank you. And I have been very lucky to be able to interview Gunter a couple of times and to go to his home. But we have to ask or say that Lufthansa's loss was humanity's gain. But I also forgot to ask you in the film, did your father have a heart attack when you did not become a pilot?
No, he was happy about so that I will become a teacher. I was later a teacher at the university in Kassel, and so it started in a way in Kassel, but the first stone was in Cologne. But in a way, so my father was soldier, normal soldier, but he was in Spain and in France as a soldier for shooting airplanes. That's abstract in a way. Shooting airplanes, you don't have to shoot to another. It's abstract. But he never spoke about. But in a way, well, I never had a chance to ask him. I think that's experience. Well,
Would you tell us a little bit about the first Stolpersteine?
well, so it started not with the Stolpersteine. It started with a line to remember the deportation of gypsy people, because the Nazis started the deportation in May 1940, deporting gypsy people from Cologne, from Düsseldorf, from Hamburg. Exactly 1,000, because the trains and so on were for 1,000. And it was like a test. You can imagine to bring away 1,000 people one day, it's logistical trouble in a way. And so in Cologne, so there were inhabitants, the gypsy people lived more than 400 years in Western Europe. And they got information, you will get a new home in the East. For coming there, you only need a small luggage, 40 to 50 kilos. And we will bring your furniture later. A cynical lie, you can imagine. And they were brought to the Fair of Cologne. The Fair of Cologne was a part of the Camp Buchenwald. And just opposite side was a railway station. Without the railway, nothing could happen. And so then friends of mine had a connection to Kurt Holl, Rom e.V. They wanted to remember this deportation and wanted to make a line with chalk on the street. And I said, okay, I will make this line, but I will print May 1940,000 Roma and Sinti. 20 kilometers. It was not chalk, it was the best color from the wall you can have. It was a disaster in a way. They wanted that I have to pay for the renovation of the streets. But later, it was a part of the sightseeing. And that was idea, because when I installed this line in the older part, the south part of Cologne, old women came and told me, well, it's pretty good what you're doing here. But here in our space, in our area, never lived gypsy people. And she really don't know, because especially the Sinti lived more than, well, I told 400 years in Western Europe. They were assimilated. In Cologne, there were, we can say, 98% Catholics, just neighbors. And then the Jewish community told me, well, all great days we made together with the Christians. We were just neighbors. That was idea to bring back the names where it started.
And here we are now. How many? We filmed the 100,000th, and it's in the film. But how many are there today?
I think now we are, or when I will go home next week, there are 113,000 in 32 countries in Europe. So that was main idea. Every country in Europe where the Deutsche Wehrmacht, the SS, the Gestapo, and the helpers killed people, deported people, tortured people, that there is a symbol, only as a symbol can be, will be stone. So, for example, one stone, Norway, you know Hammerfest. There's a small island north from Hammerfest. One Jew was hidden there. He was treated, and the Gestapo brought him to Auschwitz. Incredible in a way. So for me, last time, sometimes I heard, oh, it's all routine what you are making. And I said, okay, instead in stones, I can do it in the dark. But then thinking about what happened, it's every time a new experience. And I told him, please come with me one day for standing stones, and then in the evening you will ask me again. Well, he refused.
Yeah, exactly. Gunter, there are a couple of questions people have asked from the audience, which I wrote down before we started the conversation. And one of them was, what is the most unusual place that you have laid a stone?
Maybe this island in Norway.
Yeah. Yeah.
I cannot say. So many places.
Okay. So here now, you've laid 113,000 stones. What is the future of the project for you? How do you imagine it will go on now?
So, well, in a way, there's a foundation now called Stiftung Spuren, Traces. So Spuren means that we are collecting Spuren, and the stones, they are Spuren now. And so it will go on. So in a way, it was experience. It was a man coming from Great Britain for mother and grandma. And instead of the stones, but then he told, well, but they are not gravestones, cannot be, because both, they are gone in the air in Auschwitz. The ash was tried in the river. But then he told me, well, but now I can go home, but now I can go to Germany again. And it was first time in Norway. So somebody told me, well, it's pretty good that the German artists will bring us the stones. And that was reason to make the foundation. And well, I'm born 47, and so it will go on. And Katja, my wife, she's 28 years younger than me, and she's fit and the soul of the foundation, and she's fit to install in stones. She was in Austria, in Switzerland, in Liechtenstein. So it will go on. It
Fantastic.
will go on.
Good. One thing that I was thinking about today is the educational component of this. Jane Friedman was saying that high school children were brought to her stone laying. I think we saw that in Nuremberg for the 100,000th. Is the education is an important part of your work as well, isn't it?
It's the most important, or second most important. First for the relatives, but the coming together, the relatives with the pupils, with the young people. And so first, teachers, they told me, "Whoa, no, that's boring. That's But I have experience, because when they open a book and reading, 6 million Jews in Europe were murdered. And when they hear about there are other 8 million on other reasons were killed from the Nazis, that's, you cannot imagine. Me too. But when there's a place with stones just around the corner, that's not far away. That was just here. And they're counting for the children. They were old as we now. They start thinking. And they ask, how could this happen im so-called Land der Dichter und Denker? And at least they can, please never happen again. And that's reason to continue.
I think one last question I have quickly is, there has been some damage done to stones. Could you say something briefly about that?
Well, that happens. You cannot. It's the same as plaques on the wall were damaged. But every time a stone is stolen, so quickly as we can, make another. So it was, one was in Greifswald in Mecklenburg-Vorpommern. There were 11 stones were stolen in the night to the 9th of November. Well, you can imagine. But, and then was a sign in internet, Greifswald, Stolpersteine freie Zone. But then we got so much money, then I sold 36 new stones, and then nothing happened. But it's not east or west. In west, same things. But when it happened, we will renew suddenly.
Mhm.
as soon.
Wonderful. Well, thank you, Gunter, for talking to me. And now I'm going to pass over to Mariana Abrantes, who is going to talk to you, present you.
Thank you, Jane, and welcome to everyone. I am Mariana Abrantes. I am speaking to you from central Portugal, only a few kilometers away from the new Aristides de Sousa Mendes Museum in Cabanas de Riato. As Olivia mentioned in the beginning, the Sousa Mendes Foundation and the new Sousa Mendes Museum commemorate a unique act of conscience, which resulted in the rescue of thousands of refugees in a short but critical period in 1940. By opening the door for refuge in neutral Portugal, a last chance to escape the growing war zone. So I'm very pleased and very honored to be here today with all of you to honor another very singular action of remembrance, the Stolpersteine project, which commemorates thousands of victims of the Nazi war machine. It continues to demand our attention as you strip on them, I guess, calling out to our conscience and hopefully to motivating us to action. I first saw one of these Stolpersteine when we were in Bordeaux and on a journey on the road to freedom in 2019, and we took the bus way out of our way to see this stone, and it was very, very important. I really commend the creator of this beautiful initiative. And that's I think this growing number of these silent but unavoidable memorials really testifies to the power of their message. And that's why we're here today to present you, Gunter Demnig, hello, with the Aristides de Sousa Mendes Foundation 2024 Humanitarian Award for creating and pursuing the Stolpersteine project for so many years, literally touching us, our very feet, and involving us in this important act of remembrance. So I have created, we have this certificate for you that Matthew is also showing. It has the logo of the Sousa Mendes Foundation, the colors, you can continue showing it, Matthew. The colors of the Sousa Mendes of Israel, the colors of the Portuguese flag, green for hope and red for courage. And it has, it says that the Humanitarian Award is presented to Gunter Demnig on December 8th, 2024. And it has one simple phrase, a very touching phrase from our hero, Aristides Sousa Mendes, who said, in his own defense, I could not have acted otherwise. So congratulations and thank you, Gunter. So besides the certificate, we have another piece, which I can show here. This is a very beautiful silver coin, which has was created in 2020 for the 80th anniversary of the rescue action. I think, Matthew, you can show, well, I will show it very quickly, but Matthew is going to show you slides because it is a silver coin encased in an acrylic box set in Portuguese cork. And it's a €2 coin. So it has the likeness of Aristides on the face and on the back. It has the values that he defended. It is, so can you see it? Okay. The values are humanity, humanidade, equality, igualdade, dignity, dignidade, hope, esperança, and freedom or liberty, liberdade. this silver coin is it has a 5 euro face value. I have my numbers wrong, but it is a limited edition collector's item. And I hope you'll enjoy it, Gunter. And for a long time, unless you forget and you spend it on your next coffee at the local cafe, because it is actual legal tender. But please put it away. I will mail it to you and make sure you don't let anybody take it to the local shop. Now, thank you, Gunter Demnig, for finding such a singular and meaningful way to stop us in our tracks, and so that we can pause to remember those who were forced from their homes in the 1940s, becoming victims, or at best refugees and uprooted displaced persons. And may we all remember that no one chooses to become a refugee. Not then, and not now. So thank you again, Gunter Demnig, for this brilliant and singular initiative. Thank you.
Well, I only can say thank you, and I will continue.
It's amazing that you've devoted your life to this. It's really extraordinary. We have so many audience questions. We will get to as many as we can. So let's start now. So one of them is, do you lay stones for survivors as well, or only people who were killed in the Holocaust?
Yeah, because so especially in Germany, the Jews, they got experience that it will become dangerous. So they tried to save their children.
Mm-hmm.
They sent them to Palestine. It was desert. Oh, they had to flee. And who will left his home? And I think especially families had be together. So it was one experience in 2004 in the near of Bremen, Rothenburg an der Wümme. There was a parent, Auschwitz, but the daughters were saved with the Kindertransport. And well, I made, of course, all stones for the family. And then, installing the stones, the two daughters, one came from Colombia, South America, the other from Scotland, hadn't seen since 60 years. And then they are there, and then they said, well, now we are together with our parents. You can imagine.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
Wow.
yeah.
Wow.
That's the idea, because to flee, to left his home, they are victims too.
Yes. So just to clear up a misunderstanding of some people in the chat, just to clarify, you put these stones at the last freely chosen address of that family, correct?
It's correct, because especially in Germany, there's a so-called Judenhouses. This was not a free will to go there. Or they left their homes in the small towns, going to Frankfurt with the idea, oh, whole city, we can hide away. But there was no chance. And that was idea he lived. But there are many stones. So here was was teacher. He was a pupil. Worked. He was born. So I can say, oh, sometimes there are more stones. So one example in Münsterland, a couple fled in 34 to Holland. Well, they had stones in Münsterland. But then in Holland, they told me, but they were deported in Westerbork, Auschwitz, normal way in Holland. And Holland said, but they were neighbors, and we want to have stones too. So, okay, I said, okay, they are both.
Okay. So I remember when my family applied for Stolpersteine years ago, we wanted to place stones for our family in Lodz, Poland, but Lodz was not allowing it. Do you know if they allow it now?
Poland is a little bit hard, but it's coming better. So it's growing. And there are not many, but some stones in Poland. And it will go on, I'm sure.
And there was a question about Paris. What is the story of Paris? Does Paris allow these stones?
I don't know why they refused. I really don't know. We have not communication with Paris, and they refused. We don't know why.
Okay. So, well, I wanted to right now show the audience a little clip of what we have upcoming in 2025. I wanted also to mention, as I said, we have season tickets available for our whole next season. So let's just pause for a minute and look to see what we have upcoming this next year. I also want to mention something very exciting that we are officially announcing tomorrow, and that is we are doing an Educators Institute. Teachers, an Educators Institute in Portugal next summer. And we invite all of you to join us, to spread the word. And again, that will be going out tomorrow. You'll get information about that. Very exciting. We'll be in residence at the new Aristides de Sousa Mendes Museum. So I wanted to take this opportunity to do a whole bunch of thank yous. Thank you to our audience that comes week after week. Thank you to all of our lovely donors, and particularly those who have been sponsors of our various programs. Thank you to my wonderful team, Matthew Spurn, Emil Hafner. In Portugal, we also have Camila Liebel. Thank you to my colleagues at the Sousa Mendes Foundation, Mariana Abrantes, Mordechai Paldiel, Leah Sills, Monique Rubens-Krohn, and Jane Friedman, and many others connected to the Sousa Foundation. So thank you, Gunter Demnig, for doing what you do, and we wish you all the best. In Hebrew, we say Kol HaKavod, and continue doing what you're doing. We're cheering you on and wishing you all the best. Thank you, everybody. Happy holidays. Happy New Year. See you in 2025. Be well, everybody. Take care. Bye-bye.
crown.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you.